sharing with you guys why I chose nursing as my career and how exactly did I end up in the ICU as my first nursing specialty post-graduation. So as you guys can tell from the video, it's going to be a super chill and relaxed and informal story time. So you guys see I'm in my t-shirt and sweats and I have some hot tea going. And by the time this video is up, and if you're planning to be one of the first people to watch it, which I hope you are, then you're probably going to be in bed or in some form of comfort. So feel free to go grab a drink, whether it's wine, hot tea, coffee, whatever it is that you're in the mood for. Grab a blanket and we'll just go ahead and get started. Alright, I'm gonna get comfortable because my back is low-key hurting. Story of a nurse's life, you know? So when I was younger, like 6 to 8 years old, I remember my first initial career aspiration was to be a teacher. I remember like helping my little brother with his homework and like teaching him through the things that he was learning at school, and I really enjoyed it. And so I remember the first job that I initially wanted as a kid was to become a teacher, and then like somewhere along the way, I'm not sure how, I'm not sure who told me this or like how did I know that this was going to be important at this age, but definitely when I was in middle school, somehow I learned that like teachers don't make anything, and I just remember thinking like, oh, well then never mind. Like I just remember feeling like, oh, they have to do all of this and they don't even get paid well. What the heck? That kind of just went out the window, and I don't even really know where the idea of nursing came from. Like I genuinely cannot put my finger on it. I've tried to like think back so hard, and it's really crazy because I pride myself on like having a really good memory. So I'm just like, I don't know where that idea came from because I never was in a hospital setting besides when I went to the hospital to like see my little brother after he was born, but I didn't really have any interactions with like nurses or any doctors or anything. So I don't know where the idea came from, but when I was like 13, I just remember telling my mom like, I'm gonna be a nurse, like I'm gonna go to school and become a nurse in the future, and I'm gonna like take care of you. And that's just kind of the earliest memory I have of this initial aspiration. So I remember telling my mom that, and just some backstory, I grew up with my mom. My biological father was like not really in the picture at all, so I grew up with my mom, and she owned a nail salon. So I grew up in the nail life, so I was always around people and I was helping my mom with the salon. Low-key, it was like child labor, but you know, I feel like all minorities, we get it. I was always cleaning up and restocking things, and like I was literally so young doing this stuff, like 7, 8 years old, sweeping the nail shop and just being with her like all the time, because if I wasn't with her, I was home alone. So I basically grew up around people, and I knew that, you know, I liked customer service. I knew I was good at it. I knew how to talk to adults. And so fast forward to the month before I turned 15, I ended up losing my mom to an act of domestic violence with my biological dad. It was kind of like a, not even kind of like, it was a murder-suicide. So my biological father had alcohol issues and anger issues, and yeah, so that happened. And after that event, my whole world like obviously turned upside down. I was the only child out of the 3 of us, me and my 2 siblings. I was the only child that actually lived with her growing up. So for me, that was a big shift in my life, obviously, because my living situation, living arrangements changed like within the next day. So I ended up moving in with my little brother's dad, who I always kind of grew up saying was my dad. Like I would call him dad. He was kind of the father figure in my life, but it was more like at a distance because I only really interacted with him when it came to my little brother. Like I would go spend the summer at his house just to babysit my little brother. So it was like very distant, but obviously with the events that transpired and what happened, we were kind of like forced to become close because I essentially didn't have anywhere else to go. He was the most suitable next guardian, so I moved in with him, and that was my freshman year of high school. The rest of my high school years, I was lost, but I think I always kept my eye on like my goal, and I took it very personal that I told my mom this is what I was gonna become. Okay, I literally said I was not gonna do this. I'm just gonna sip my tea. I always was about, or at least tried to be about what I said. If I say I'm gonna do something, if I say I want something to happen, or like I set a goal out for myself, then I really tried my best to make it happen. So after I lost my mom, it was like a personal mission of mine. Like I was like, I have to become a nurse. Like this is what I told her I was gonna become, and that's just what it has to be. And thinking back to my high school years, I was definitely lost and did things as a result of grieving the loss of technically both my parents, but really grieving the loss of my mom and just like that trauma that I experienced. So I definitely acted out in some ways. However, like I never strayed away from like my academics. I just remember like, especially the rest of that freshman year, I would just not go to class. Like I would be at school, but I would go sit in the bathroom. I would go sit in the bathroom for like hours and just not go to class. But then sophomore year, junior year, as I had more time to get it together, I really got focused on school. No matter what was going on, like I was trying to be a 4.0 student. So I went through high school just with the mindset of like, I'm just gonna do my best in high school and like things will work out. It was kind of like, I don't need to think about college right away because that's not even coming up until senior year. And you know, when you're in high school, you just think that stuff is like so far away. So when senior year came around, I had received all these scholarships and grants for U of M, and it was basically like a full ride. So I was like, you know what, I'm gonna go with the easiest choice, and this is like in my backyard type thing. So I went to the University of Memphis, started out as a pre-nursing major, and you know, just went along the course of that. When it came around time for me to apply to nursing school, I applied, and luckily I was accepted the first go around because University of Memphis nursing program is known to be kind of hard to get into among the other nursing programs that are available. So I just knew that I really did not want to transfer because that was just going to make my life harder and cause me more stress. But obviously if it came down to that, then I wouldn't have had a choice. But I genuinely just put all my eggs in one basket. I applied to University of Memphis. I didn't apply anywhere else because I was just like, I'm not trying to shape shift all my scholarships, all the money. Like I don't want to even have to think about that because I haven't been paying for school. So hopefully it stays that way. And it worked out. Got into nursing school, went through nursing school, and along the way, like, I don't know, it's kind of crazy. I don't know. This has to be God because like it's just kind of crazy how I don't think I ever really questioned whether nursing was for me or not because I knew that I cared about people. I care about my clients at the nail shop, so I know I would definitely care about my patients who are sick and actually like need me. I started out wanting to be a psych nurse. I remember when I started nursing school, one of the first things they tell you is that, oh, like keep your mind open. You might think you know what you want to do. Everyone goes in thinking they want to do one type of specialty and they always change and da-da-da. And me just being me, I'm just like, no, that's not me. I'm going to be a psych nurse. I know I'm going to be a psych nurse because I always do what I say I'm going to do. So I was like, just dead set, I'm not going to change my mind. And as I went through the semesters, I remember when I had my med-surg clinical, I was thinking like I could do med-surg because I liked med-surg. I thought that they get to see everything. That was honestly the first nursing course in clinical where we were actually like learning multiple disease processes. Everything prior to that was just like split up, so it wasn't really, you know, directed to like a patient where you're learning like scenario based. So I think that's just where I got like the interest. But then, you know, I learned what med-surg was about and I was like, oh no, I can't do this. But initially I was like, oh, I think I could do med surg. But then I got to my psych clinical and I still was like, I'm gonna do psych, I'm gonna do psych. And I even emailed my psych professor at the time and was like telling her like, oh, I love your class, like I'm gonna do psych, which I did like psych. I liked the content. I thought it was very interesting. I liked everything I was learning in the book. But I just remember going to clinical and I did well, but something in me was just like, you cannot do this like every shift. Like I don't think I could handle that every shift. There's psych patients everywhere, but I don't think that I could like work with that specific population every single shift. Like I think that would be draining. And I was just like, I think your inner child is healed a little bit. Like I think a big part of me wanting to go into psych was because of what happened, like because of what I experienced, and I just wanted to understand it so bad. Like I feel like initially the interest was like I wanted to understand why my biological father did this. Like how could he do this? Like alcoholism, that is like a mental illness, and he probably had other issues too, but I think it was just me more so wanting to understand. But by the time that I was actually already in nursing school, going through the rotations and like learning the actual textbook things, like I think at that point I was at a different point in my life. Like I was not all the way healed, but I had healed a lot from that time, because it was, I mean, now it's been like what, 8 years, and then it was like maybe 5, 6 years. At that time, a part of me just knew that like I no longer was attached to that. Like I didn't have that vendetta anymore. I don't think I really want to do psych. I think that a part of me just wants to do psych just because I said I was going to do psych, but a part of me is like, girl, it's okay to change your mind. So I was really like resistant for a minute, like not wanting to change my mind. I knew for sure I did not want to do peds. I was like, heck no, I cannot work with kids. Like I don't even know what to say to them. They scare me. Like I am good with kids outside of the hospital setting, but in the hospital setting, I just don't know what to say to them. And then I just think it's too much sadness. Like it's just way too much sadness. I knew for the most part, my patient population, I wanted to work with adults because that's my sole experiences with adults, or the geriatric population. I have an extreme soft spot for the elderly, because I think it stems from being raised by my grandmother for like a little bit of my upbringing, and plus I'm Asian, so in the Asian culture it's like respect your elders. So I just have a strong respect and care and empathy for the elderly, and I knew that I love taking care of them, so it had to be adult and up. It could not be peds. So I knew that much at least. So I'm going through these disciplines and I'm just kind of like, I can kind of see myself doing a little bit of any of these. I really just couldn't put my finger on anything. So it wasn't until my senior year, I had just started my job in the ED as a nursing assistant. I started in July, so it was like right before I started my senior year, and I worked there until I graduated. And I remember starting the job, and I really didn't know anything because that was my first hospital job. I remember there was like something going on, like some emergency, and they were like, oh, go run, get the Coban. And I'm like running to the storage room and I'm like freaking out, and I'm like, what is Coban? I don't even know what that is. So I was so grateful that I started working in the hospital, because that was my goal. I was like, I cannot graduate as a nurse and I've never even stepped foot in the hospital. Like that would just give me anxiety, because I don't know real world. I just know what nursing school has taught me. So I made it a point to get some hospital experience, and I'm like forever grateful to have worked in that ED, because I met so many great nurses that were such positive influences on me, and I learned so many things like what Coban is. So because of that, I kind of learned, you know, how things are done in the hospital, and like what are the different supplies names, and how, you know, what the real world looks like. So when I was going through that time, I thought I could do this. Like I love ED. Like I truly fell in love with like the fast pace of ED. I love that you were the first hands on the patient. I love that, you know, you weren't stuck with the same patients for the most part. Sometimes you would have holds where you're kind of stuck with patients, but for the most part, normally you're not stuck with patients for very long. So I like all the ideas and concepts of ED, and I truly felt like I had found like the discipline that I thought I would be really good at and like would like to do. So I thought I was going to be ED nurse, and I went into my final semester where they place us at these clinical sites, and we have to do like 240 hours. First, you're kind of randomly placed with a hospital, and then I forgot what they call it, but the person that's basically overseeing that clinical site, your clinical instructor, that's what it is. Your clinical instructor randomly places you in like whatever units are available. So I remember seeing that there was like one ED position available, and then there was like a few ICUs, and then med surg and OB, and I was like trying to manifest so hard. I was like, please put me ED. I needed to see, or I wanted to see, you know, what does that RN role look like in the ED setting, because I know what it looks like as an aide, and you know, that's just not the same level of responsibility. I would really love to see, you know, what's expected of me, and I want to get that hands-on experience before I actually graduate and like go into EDs. I remember just like asking God, I was like praying, and I was like, God, put me where I'm gonna learn the most, like, and I'm thinking in my head, I'm like, he's gonna put me in ED because he knows it's where I'm gonna learn the most. Lead the way, like guide me where I need to go in order to be the best nurse that I can be. So then when it came down to the placements, I did not get the ED role, and I was so bummed, and I got placed in ICU. That was the one specialty that I dreaded going to the clinical. Just a semester before, it was COVID time, so we didn't even have to go as much as we would have, but we went to our actual clinical site for like 6-7 hours 3 times. I only went 3 times, and each time I did not want to go. I dreaded it. I remember stepping foot into the ICU the very first time, and I was with the preceptor, and I was just grossed out. I was like, I'm scared. I don't want to touch these people. They look like they're dead. I don't know what to do. Like, I'm scared. All this equipment is so intimidating. Seeing people intubated, seeing breathing tubes down their throat, like they can't move, they can't do anything for themselves, seeing feeding tubes, seeing invasive lines and all these like extra hemodynamic stuff on the monitor. I'm like, I just did not feel smart enough for that. I was like, this is too much. I was like, this is not for me. And my best friend was actually in the same clinical group as me, and we would talk about it. We would be like, yeah girl, this is not it. No way we could do this. No way I could do this. Like, this is just, ugh. Like, I was like, like, I was just so scared. And then I almost barely made it through the actual class. Like, I was almost failing. I was really clocked out because at that time I had to work my ED job and go to school, and I was just like pretty much already starting to get drained from nursing school and just from work, but I couldn't do anything about it because I had to work and I had to do school. So I was like, why? I was like, but you know what? I was like, I did ask him to put me somewhere where I'm gonna learn the most, and obviously if you're at the highest level of care, you're gonna learn the most. So I was like, I'm just gonna go in there and fake it till I make it, and I'm just gonna hope for the best, and I'm just gonna get through these next couple months. So I went to clinical, and it ended up being paired with this amazing nurse. It was her first time being a preceptor to a student. She didn't even know she was going to precept me, so it was like a little unprofessional, but not on her behalf, but just like how we got thrown together was kind of unprofessional. But anyway, she was so amazing. She had like 20 plus years of nursing experience at that hospital in the ICU, and she definitely changed my perspective because, like I said, I didn't even want to touch these people. I was scared, and we were over here having to give both our patients bed baths and like turning them and crap, and like everybody was intubated, and it was a smaller ICU, and it was in a rougher part of town, so it was like we were just limited on like all sorts of resources. Like, we were the only resource really, and she just taught me so much in that short time that we spent together, and I grew to become comfortable with, you know, that patient population, dealing with someone that sick. And I realized I knew so much more than I thought I knew, and obviously with her guidance as well, just extremely mentally stimulating. And then, like I said, you get more comfortable with seeing all this like equipment. I remember her telling me, her perspective on it, which is like, if you're in this unit, if you are in the ICU, you are maxed out on resources. I have everything that I could possibly need. I could get anything I could possibly need to treat you and help you. And if none of these things work, then it was probably your time to go. Versus when you're on a different unit where you have limitations on what kind of meds you can give, what kind of interventions you can, do. Like, you can't have an intubated patient on med-surg floor, things like that. So when they're here and I have everything, I have all the tools, and they still pass, then I know that there was nothing I could do in my power. And I just felt like that was such a powerful message that she said to me, and I was just like, never thought about it that way. And I was just like, you're right. I told her, I was like, I'm gonna do ED. I think I'm gonna do ED because I love my job, da 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 da. And she would just like tell me, not in like a mean way or like a limiting way, she would just say, you're not gonna make it an ED. You're such an ICU nurse. You are so meticulous. You are very detailed oriented. You are very organized. You like your rooms a certain way. You go in there and you're rearranging all this tubing and you're lining everything up and you're like all in depth with the charting. You are not an ED nurse. You would not survive an ED. Like, it's going to be too chaotic. These are great qualities of like an ICU nurse, and I really think you should reconsider because you would be an amazing ICU nurse. I feel like a part of it was like they wanted me to be there as well, which like if I would have stayed in Memphis, I maybe would have probably stayed there just because there was a great need in that unit. But I had to like listen to what she said. I had to keep an open mind, open ear. Wow, like I'm so conflicted because I've been able to see both worlds, and I kind of like both worlds. Like, I can see the best of both worlds. Before I graduated, like February, March, I was like looking into jobs. I was planning to move here to Columbus, Ohio, and I already knew what hospital I wanted to work for, and I was just like eyeballing their website because I knew that they had like fellowships, or in the South we call them residencies, but they have like nursing residencies basically for like specialty areas. So they had residency for ED, residency for ICU. That was kind of like your way to get into the door as a new grad if you wanted to start in those units. I knew that when it came to the interview, I would have to make a choice. Like, I couldn't just be like, oh, I want to do both. Like, that was not going to happen. So I had to really hone in and think like, what would be best for me. And I remember going to my nursing colleagues at the ED, and I was asking all the ED nurses, I'm like, what do you think I should do? What's your advice? Like, da 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 da. And I truly valued their opinion. So they told me, as an ED nurse, they were like, if they could go back in time, they would have wished that they started out in ICU, just because with everything happening with the pandemic and the higher patient acuity and the holds that they would have. Sometimes they'll have 1 or 2 out of 4 patients, 1 or 2 of them are like ICU patients, but they can't go to the ICU because there's no room. So they're like stuck with them, and then pretty much that nurse is like freaking out or just really anxious the entire shift because they're not used to having that level of acuity for a long time. Like, they're not used to titrating drips, and like they're definitely not turning these patients on this freaking stretcher, and like they're not used to this patient population, So they were just telling me straight up, like, I wish I would have started in ICU so that I would have been more comfortable as an ED nurse, especially with these higher acuity patients and you're stuck with them. A lot of them were telling me that, they think that ED is really good with skills. Like, you learn your skills very easily in the ED because you're constantly doing them. It's like a constant rotation of skills. When a patient comes in, you pop an IV in them, you like draw these labs, you do this, that, and the other. It's like very task oriented in a way. And with ICU, it's more like critically thinking oriented. Not saying that ED nurses don't have to critically think. Most of the time you don't have your patients long enough to really have to go in and think about their whole body system, versus in ICU you really are trying to focus on head to toe. This is turning into a ED versus ICU combo. I'm sorry. That's not where I was trying to go. Let me digress. Since ED nurses were telling me that they wish they would have started in ICU, I was like, okay, this is my sign. God tried to tell me. He showed me. I'm hearing these messages from people. and I'm just gonna take this leap, even though this scares the shit out of me. I'm gonna just take this leap and go into ICU. And one of my best friends in nursing school, his name's Ladarius. I'll put a picture of us up. But he was like always into ICU. I'm not sure if he had an internship in the Neuro ICU or not, but this boy had like 5 jobs. So he was very well rounded. He actually got me my job in the ED. So anyway, he was interested in Neuro ICU, and I just remember being like, yeah, that sounds cool. I'll do that. So I basically just copied my best friend. I just copied him and was like, I guess I'll try to do Neuro ICU because I do think that's interesting. Neuro, brain, cool. I don't know. I was like, I don't know. When it came to interviewing with my job here in Columbus, it just like all worked out that way. So I got into the ICU fellowship, and then when it came down to selecting an ICU, I told them I wanted neuro, and now I got placed into a neuro critical care. It's been amazing, and it's so cool because I just had no idea. I had no idea how great this health system was because I'm not from Ohio. It ended up being like extremely reputable. Like I would recommend anyone to come work at my hospital. And the unit is just like very, very nice people. They all want to help you like learn and grow. And it's just a very healthy nursing environment that I haven't really seen. And so I feel super duper fortunate and grateful that this is where I'm starting out as a new graduate nurse. And so that's how I ended up in ICU. I genuinely feel like it was meant to be. Like this was placed into my heart, placed into my plans, like God's plan for me, because otherwise it wouldn't have worked out the way it did. I truly accomplished like one of my biggest life goals by becoming a nurse. Nursing has saved me in more ways than one, just with things that have gone on recently in my life. You guys been keeping up with me, then you know I'm in this new city, navigating it on my own, and if I didn't have my nursing job, I would be struggling 10 times more. Not saying that my life is just a breeze right now, but nursing has definitely made a huge impact on me, and in a very positive way, and I just love what I do. I love what I do. I'm very passionate about it, and I'm grateful. What can I say? I'm grateful. And so that is my story, and that is my truth, and I hope that this left an impact on any of you that are watching, whether you're a nurse yourself or if you're an aspiring nurse. I hope that this inspires you or motivates you in some way. If you're a nurse, please be sure to comment below and let me know that you watched, and let me know why you're a nurse and what specialty you're in. If you're an aspiring nurse, let me know why did you get into nursing and what specialty do you think you want to go in, or do you just know, or do you think you know, like how I thought I do, even though I changed like multiple times. Thank you so much for tuning in, and happy Nurses Week 2022. If you guys follow me on Instagram, then you know that this is just the first out of the 4 videos that are going up this week in honor of Nurses Week. And so if you're interested in seeing those other videos, don't forget to subscribe. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. And if you don't follow me on Instagram, head over to Instagram and follow me, because that is where I post the most and I interact with people the most. And just thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for the growing support. I really, really appreciate you guys. This is also another passion of mine, is just sharing my life with you guys. So thank you so much for supporting me, and I'll see you guys next time.